Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Millie channel. I am JayBee and joining me as always is Millie.
Hi.
And we have Rhianna
Hello.
and Smash.
Hello.
And our special guest today is amazing choreographer Paul Becker.
Hello.
So you are absolutely incredible. I think like legend is not an overstatement. You know, I can think about 5 of my favorite movies of all time and you've choreographed them. It's crazy. Just because all the Scooby stuff was cool enough. And then I was scrolling through IMDb and I was like, oh my God, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Cabin in the Woods. It's like all that stuff is just brilliant. But, you know, according to your website and IMDb, you first like choreographed your first movie at the age of 19. But what kind of led you up to that? What was your kind of driving force to get into choreography?
Wow. Well, I had the privilege of being a dancer in the film Chicago. So I was like thrown into it with my first big movie. I had done some stuff on film and TV before, little small things, but Chicago was a big one. And I was young and I was like one of the youngest guys in the cast. And seeing Rob Marshall do his thing, directing and choreographing, I was like, I want to do that. Like, it was so inspiring to watch his process and work, him and John. And that made me want to just dive into it. So immediately I started just honing in on my craft and learning the navigating the world of choreography, understanding who the major players are and how to get in the door and stuff like that was one thing, but actually getting good and understanding the art of choreography for film and television was a fun art to learn. I embraced it, but it was something that I got really passionate about really fast. I picked up a camera and just started shooting, teaching myself. I never went to film school or anything like that. I just learned from being on set, asking questions, and just kind of just being a sponge. So when my first job came around, I was actually with Brian Levant, who was my first film was with Brian Levant, was Are We There Yet? With starring Ice Cube. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had just quit a job because I was miserable. It was on a cruise ship as a dancer, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. And I literally lasted like 3 days and I quit. And I flew back and I landed. And about 2 months prior, I'd been sending my materials out in FedEx envelopes everywhere to every producer. I mean, anyone I could find. And one of them was Matt Alvarez at Cube Vision. And they called me and they said, we got your materials. And I was like, you did? That was like, it was a shot in the dark. It was literally like throwing at a dartboard. And they're like, we'd love for you to come in for a meeting. So I came in for a meeting and I guess I impressed them. They gave me a chance. That was like, they were taking a chance. I had no real like experience. I had a couple of commercials I had done, a few fibs on my resume probably, but I really wasn't like qualified. So I jumped in there and was like, yeah, I can do it. I can do that. I can do that. Like I was learning on the job, really. So I got a chance to work with Brian, and obviously I knew who he was, and I was a fan of his films and stuff like that. So I was an Ice Cube. I grew up, you know, with NWA and was a big fan of Ice Cube. So doing Are We There Yet was a huge turn for me, and that led to actually Scooby-Doo. That led to Mystery Begins. So yeah, so keeping in touch with Brian over the years led to that. If I hadn't kept in touch and just dropped him a line, and it probably wouldn't have gotten a call again. Who knows? I don't know. We just kept in touch. We clicked. I really loved working with the guy. I thought he was a genius, and yeah, it was an awesome experience. So that's sort of how I started in a short and condensed version.
I mean, it certainly is an inspiring story about kind of how things just happen at the right time, like being able to get away from the job that you weren't enjoying and all that kind of thing. It is a great story to hear. And I know you were starting to talk about kind of the choreographers that you got to see, like Ron Marshall and things like that. And so other than them, can you think of any other movies or choreographers that you kind of saw either just watching movies growing up or anything like that that, you know, inspired you in any way? I know you said that Brian Levant movies as well you'd enjoyed, so.
Well, definitely Gene Kelly films, Singing in the Rain. That made me want to dance. That made me want to be Gene Kelly. And to come to learn he was a choreographer, and I lived on the same block for a while as his widow, Patricia, who runs his legacy. And that was pretty inspiring to meet her. And my good friend and creative partner, Kenny Ortega, and he over the years he's been a vessel and a mentor to me. Gene Kelly was his mentor. So there's Gene Kelly for sure. All of his films, people like Ben Vereen, his films, all that jazz, Bob Fosse. I've pulled from everything in my work, even Tim Burton. Just the way his animation moves and the quirkiness of his creatures inspires movement for dance and storytelling to me. So I kind of pull from inspiration from anything and everything, photographs to cartoons. It really inspired me along the way. And definitely Baryshnikov. I always wanted to be Baryshnikov. I could never quite get to that caliber, but he definitely inspired me. And in watching movies like Beat Street and Breakin' 1 and Breakin' 2 and all these like hip hop breakdance films back in the day, and Soul Train, the 90s version of Soul Train, definitely got me moving. So yeah, there's a lot of inspiration along the way. I grew up in an island, so in Victoria, British Columbia. So I didn't have like there wasn't a lot of places to train. There was one that I trained at and I learned a lot from. But as far as like culture, dance culture, hip hop culture and stuff like that, I had to learn it from media. It wasn't really in my town yet. So yeah.
Those are all great, you know, inspirations and things that you pulled from. And as well as the choreography, you've done some work as an actor and stunt performer. Is that something you would ever want to dive into more?
So I fell into stunts and acting I love doing, but I don't like auditioning.
Yeah.
I hate auditioning, and it's such a vulnerable thing. And so if an acting role comes along, like it has with the last thing I did, I think was Legends of Tomorrow. I played a villain, and that was a lot of fun. But I was choreographing that episode, and they were like, "Would you consider playing this role?" And I was like, "Yeah." So that was different. But man, I watch actor friends of mine go through the grind of auditioning, even if they're at a high level that you think they won't have to audition anymore. They are, and it's vulnerable, and it's I don't enjoy that part of it. So yes, I would love to do more acting, but no, I don't want to necessarily do all the work to do that. And as far as stunt performing, I kind of fell into stunts, and I don't consider myself a stunt man. I joke around about being a stunt man, but like I as an actor, I would do my own stunts, like with Dark Angel, and even on Scooby-Doo 2. I did stunts, and then various other movies I've done stunts, but and Supergirl was the last one I did. Stunt doubling Jeremy Jordan. But again, they called me and asked me to do it, and I was like, "Really? You want me to do it? All right, let me see if I have that day off." And I just did it for fun. It wasn't like a passion or a career. In fact, I've gotten injured doing it. So I'll leave that to the professionals at this point in my career. But it makes for good stories.
You're definitely right there. Like And as you mentioned with the auditioning, I've done a few auditions, and the whole process is stressful. And then as soon as it's done, you're like, okay, I can breathe. And then another one starts, and it's just like, okay, it's all over again. But as you mentioned with Scooby-Doo too, a role that you were cast in was the ghost clown, which unfortunately was cut. But recently we actually got to see some footage of you as the ghost clown, which I wish it was kept. But do you remember what the process was like for being cast as the ghost clown?
Yeah, I do. So I had been auditioning as an actor, and there's a casting, Corinne and Heike, they're casting directors in Vancouver, and they've done a lot of stuff, and they're very talented casting directors. And they had been bringing me in and very supportive of my career as an upcoming actor and dancer and stuff. And they had just cast me in a movie called A Wrinkle in Time for ABC. It was the first remake of it, and I played a creature, and that got cut out of the entire movie. I remember it was a big shoot, and then they brought me in, and they were like, "You're gonna play the ghost clown. We want you to audition for it." And I was like, how do I make this interesting? So I remember going in. I was like, if I were the ghost clown, what would I sound like? And what would how would I do? So I actually channeled a little bit of Ben Vereen and Pippin with that, and I thought to myself, because I was a juggler and I was a circus performer, I knew how to juggle. I learned how to juggle from a guy named Anthony Gatto. His father and him taught me how to juggle when I was doing a show in Branson, Missouri when I was 17, and they taught me how to juggle clubs and knives and fire and stuff like that. So I went into the audition with 3 balls, and I literally stood there and I was like, I threw the balls and I was like, and I just kind of like, just was messing around. And I booked it, but it was because of the physicality I brought to it, and the distinct way I chose to make him sound and act, and none of that was scripted. It was just all improv, really. There was a big part for the ghost clown originally in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. It was actually substantial. Same with Ernst Roll and other characters. I believe originally when I was booked on it, I was there for the entire shoot. It was like it was for the whole thing, and I had I had camera tests, and then I had a couple of shoot days actually, where I was like, they had me on wires dropping down from the ceiling, and I don't think that was on the camera tests, but I literally was in my full makeup, and I was like scaring, I believe it was Fred. But I was disappointed when it got cut. They weren't really clear on what's going on. They just said there's been some creative changes, and come to find out it was I never really got to the bottom of it. I knew they wanted to, there was just creative differences between the studio and the creatives. That happens, you just go with the flow, but it just definitely something where it was a lot of makeup. It was my makeup. I remember it was 6 hours, and I'd worked with the same team, Bill Tarazakic, and he was doing my makeup. He was the same. He was the guy who did my makeup for A Wrinkle in Time, and I worked with him on other projects. And he passed away a couple of years ago now. And so that makeup was brutal. And so I probably lucked out by it being cut, because I don't know if I would have held up with all that prosthetics for months and months. I was definitely, I remember being very excited to work with Raja, and he was a very good director. At the time, I was like heavy into the dance industry still, and still auditioning as a dancer. And Ann Fletcher was the choreographer of Scooby-Doo 2. Ann Fletcher is now the director of the new Hocus Pocus film, Hocus Pocus 2, and she directed Enchanted and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. I remember just hanging out with the dancers a lot of times on set. A lot of them were my friends. So it was a familiar environment on set. It was a friendly environment, and there was a lot of excitement in the city about the film. I remember.
Oh gosh, well, it is such a shame that it was cut because they're just such an iconic villain, and just like the glimpses that we saw, for all I think Peter Crosman had to speed up the tapes a bit, it was still amazing to see that performance, and it was genuinely quite terrifying, really, because I don't have I don't know what the word is, clown phobia by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely unsettling. And do you recall if later on in either the test or the shoots what type of lines of dialogue the ghost clown was meant to have?
I'm trying to think. I don't remember that. You know what? I was looking at the timeline that we shot Scooby-Doo 2 20 years ago. We filmed it 20 years ago. And this just to think how fast time goes by. It was released in 2004, and we shot it around 2002, like around 2002, 2003. So it was 20 years ago when we shot it. I have no clue what dialogue I had, but I know there was a lot, and I know there was chase scenes, and there was fight scenes, and they wanted him to fly a little bit too. It was a big experiment. And I know there was tension amongst creatives, amongst the studio and creatives, and some issues going on with that. Somebody lost the fight. Somebody lost the fight, and we were all cut.
Yeah, I think I recall from that conversation there was an argument. It was almost like it was divided: team, CGI monsters, or team practical monsters. And I think ultimately CGI monsters won out purely for the fact that Scooby himself was more along the CGI effect. But
Yeah.
really, when you look at the final film, I'm not seeing that as too much of a legitimate argument, considering they're all like greened up anyway with that fog and the smoke. So I don't know, like maybe one day they'll do something. It would have even been great to have seen you step into the role of the clown in Cabin in the Woods as like some vindication, like, yes, finally.
Yeah.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that.
would've-
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that would have been cool.
But like you say, like the silver lining was that you didn't need to go through the process of all like the makeups or prosthetics or thing of the clown. But for the test shoots, do you recall how long it took to get ready for that?
For me, my makeup on the test shoots for Scooby-Doo 2 took around 6 hours, I believe. The teeth, I had prosthetic teeth, but what was worse was I had to do a full body mold, a full body cast. So they stood me up. I had 2 ski poles to hold on to, and they wrapped my entire body like a mummy, all the way up to my neck. And they made a mold, a whole cast of my body. But what happens is your body starts to heat up, and all the heat rises. So you start to, I started to feel dizzy. And I literally passed out standing up. And I knew that was going to happen because it happened to me before for A Wrinkle in Time, but it sucked. It sucked. And then the mold of your face too. They do the same thing, and they wrap your face, the 6 straws up your nose. Oh. And that's, if you have claustrophobia, it's not for you. You're there for like 20 minutes.
Awful.
Yeah.
It's so awful to think that you kind of went through all that, and then for the it just doesn't seem like any justice was there with the clown not being part of the movie. But you still are mentioned on IMDb as being part of the movie, that you're involved with some scenes and some stunts as well. I know you kind of mentioned about some wires, and I know that kind of comes into the stunt umbrella, but do you remember specifically any stunts that you were involved with?
Yeah, I mean, there was a fall, and then there was the wire work where I'd have to, they dropped me down like 20 feet from the ceiling upside down, and they just lowered me down into some frames. Basically, I would mupp it down, I call it, into frame. Just mupp it up, sideways. I always say that from after working with the Muppets for many movies now. It's like actually a term I use for choreographing. When somebody pops up in a frame, I call it mupp it up.
Oh, that's brilliant. And again, it's just, it would have been great to being able to see these scenes, but it was also, good that we managed to at least see some footage because it did look like it would be an incredible character. But I guess kind of moving back towards the choreography a little bit, in that you worked on a number of really, notable projects. I mean, certainly kind of names that would be quite exciting for us growing up in terms of, like the Jonas Brothers, which was like my first concert, Miley Cyrus and Michael Bublé working on kind of concerts, music videos. So how do you approach that type of choreography as opposed to the work you do on things like movies?
It's totally different. With movies, when I get a film, I usually have the script and I break it down and I see the characters and all the relationships between the characters, and I figure out what the story is in that scene, the beginning, middle, and an end, and then I get it on its feet like a scene, and I don't even add dance steps yet, and then I decide what the camera transitions are and how it's going to move, and then I'm now ready to add decoration and dance and storytelling through dance. So I add dance as the last element, and then I shoot it like a previs. Whereas with stage, with film, your focus is the camera. That's your focus. Wherever you aim it, that's focus. With stage is the other. It's more difficult actually with stage because you're pulling focus on a big wide stage, and you're pulling focus with lights, and you're pulling focus with really lights and direction and distraction. So the focus is absolutely different, and that's really the biggest difference is the focus. So it is a totally different approach. I love doing concerts and I love the thrill of it because it's a one-time shot and you get immediate gratification from the audience. But the thrill of it to me is you got one chance. That one time, it's got to go right. So that's a huge difference too. With film, you can just do it again until you get it right. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a little bit more relief with doing film again because you can do it a few times. But speaking of film that I feel like we all really like is the original Diary of a Wimpy Kid trilogy that you worked on. But what was that like to have like a cast that was so ranged in both the acting and dancing experience? Was that nice to have from them?
So yeah, I got the pleasure to do Diary of a Wimpy Kid 1, 2, and 3, the original 3, and that was a blast. I mean, that was to me that was like I got to work with. In the first one, it was what did we do? We did a crazy dance with Riley and his mom, and that was his real mom. That was his actual mom we cast. And they wanted it to be real. She was so nervous. I remember her being so nervous, but she did really well. And the good thing about it is that they wanted it to be bad. They wanted it to be like just wrong, just confusing. So that's where I shine. So it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. We got to do the song, the Beastie Boys song. And I just remember that choreography slapping their butts. Everyone was looking like, what are they doing? We had a short window of rehearsal for that. We shot it in Vancouver, Canada. And that led to 2 more films. Those movies were always fun. It was like a family. And Steve Zahn playing the father. We got to work together years later on a series called Valley of the Boom, become good friends. Great guy, and I still keep in touch with the cast. I get emails and we still keep in touch. It was that was a great time for me.
And like it again, there were the 3 films that you helped on. Did that help having like the cast stay relatively the same? You got to work with them over a course of time, build that relationship with them. Yeah.
It was like they were comfortable, and we were working with the kids. We want people to be comfortable and the family to be comfortable. So we had by the time the 3rd film came around, we had a second hand. I knew their abilities,
Yep.
I knew the director wanted me to do this, this, and that. I was like, okay, well, they can do that, but they probably couldn't do this or whatever, so it worked in my favor.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And they all turned out so great. And another thing that you choreographed was Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events, which I binge watched so many times. I love it. And there's so many iconic dances and musical numbers, which admittedly I'm still trying to teach myself by watching, and it's not going too well, but I'll get there one day. Do you have any that stand out to you as being the most rewarding to work on from the musical sequence?
A Series of Unfortunate Events to me is a highlight of my career, to be honest, creatively, and it was just fulfilling to do. I had worked with Barry Sonnenfeld on a movie called RV with Robin Williams years prior, and I'd worked with the other producer, Rose Lamb, on other Hellcats and other movies. So when it came time, they called me, and they said, well, Rose said, if we have a small scene, there's not really much dancing. It's just it's the first episode, it's the pilot episode. Not just a bunch of characters playing instruments. They're supposed to be bad. You're not going to need much time with them. Just keep it really simple and just kind of go in there. And the producers really downplayed what it is. I hadn't talked to Barry yet about it. So I got the script and I got the song, and it was called It's the Count. It's the count, it's the count, it's the count. And it was just a demo version of it. And I was like, they're missing an opportunity here. They want me to play it. They want me to just give them a few, just have them stand and play instruments. I was like, this could be so much more in this world. So I asked for rehearsal to be at, instead of at a dance studio, I asked for rehearsal to be on the set. So it was on a weekend. They had just built that set, and it was fresh. It was no one's worked in that building. It was inside of the soundstage, and it was in the mansion. It was in Neil's mansion, and I asked for a skeleton crew, so I had one dancer for each role, and of the twins and all. Yeah, so I had one dancer for each role, and Barry came in and talked to me, and they all kind of said, Barry said, just do your thing, and you have your camera, you just directed a movie, I trust you, do your thing and we'll come back. So I played, and I shot a previs of It's the Count, and I decided to make it a single camera, no second camera, no third camera. I just wanted it to be single camera, old fashioned, like one way to cut this number together each time. So I kept it really, really simple, and played. And I shot that previs, and Barry came and said, let's see it. And I said, well, actually, I'm not going to show it to you live. They're like, what? I'm going to show it to you here. Previs it. I edited it together on the fly. And they saw it, and they were like, oh my God. And they said, come over here. And they called other producers over and stuff. And they just kind of were fanning over it. And that's when I knew we had something. And Barry added his touch to it. He went on the ledge and changed the way we shot. That C is for courageous. Oh, that there was a moment where we're using depth to spell out the count. And Barry added some great notes to it, and we had the count. And on the day, we used my iPhone as a shot list because we had it mapped out. So the first episode was a pivotal thing for me. I built a new level of trust with Barry, so that when each episode came along in season 2 and 3, and even more in season 1, Barry would tell the incoming directors, just let Paul do his thing. So it was a treat, because I literally would come in and Barry would say, what do you have planned for us, Paul? And I would say, well, for this number, I want a giant ball built so Neil can pretend he's walking on it. So when the camera pans out, he's actually not walking on the ball. He's actually just pretending to. Or I want a cannon for like confetti to come out of. I would just add bells and whistles and play with just the quirkiness and the zaniness of it all. Again, it wasn't supposed to be good, but it can still be good without being good. So I treated them very seriously, and I loved doing that show. My favorite one is probably Schemes, Keep Chasing Your Schemes, in a place called Herring Houdini's restaurant, and where we played with fish, we played with various funny gags. In that series, I would show up on set and I'd wrap B&C camera. I'd say, B&C camera, you guys can go home. We're just using a camera and we're just going to shoot every number one camera, shot for shot. So when you watch back, if you go on my YouTube channel, you can see side-by-side comparisons of all my musical numbers from the Series of Unfortunate Events, and shot for shot, they match the rehearsal footage. Because the directors, Barry and his team really respected the craft of choreography, and they collaborated with me very well, and I collaborated with them. So it was, man, I would love to do that show over and over and over because it was so much fun.
But it, like, just watching it and hearing all of that, it just makes it even more amazing. And it's such a great show. The choreography is so great. And you mentioned that you're basically given free will, like just go up and do your thing with the choreography, which is amazing. And I was wondering, do you find it easier to work from like a pitch that this is our basic idea, do something with that, or do you prefer having free reign and creating something from your own mind?
I like free reign, but I'll work with a pitch. I'm always having to adapt and collaborate and bring a director's vision to life if I'm not the director. So I'm always having to do that, but I don't want it to be too restricting because I want to leave room for my imagination to grow. If it's like if I'm too boxed in early on, it's not going to evolve. If you have too many restrictions on you, it's always smart for a director to say, here's what I was thinking, but go have fun and come back, and then I'll give you notes. If they say, this is what I want, in this moment, you need to do this, you time me up, and I'll let them know that ahead of time. This is not how I like to work, and maybe you need to look at someone else to choreograph this, because this is not going to evolve in a way that I'll be proud of. Just based on experience. I've been doing it a long time now.
Oh gosh, I mean, it is just such an iconic show, and I've been like hoping and praying for another season ever since it ended. But of course, it ended like it had an episode that even expanded from the book's material and the intro and the third and final season. So probably not, but it's cool that we've got it there to keep rewatching. And just one of my favorite pieces of choreography from that whole series is the whole House of Freaks number. The welcome, welcome to the House of Freaks. It's just so cool how it has the choreography and then there's scope for, I guess, the freak to display what their power is. And one of them, of course, is played by Robbie Amell, who's Fred in The Mystery Begins and Curse of the Lake Monster, which is what we love as well. What led to choreographing those two movies? Of course, you mentioned, with Brian Levant, that pre-established relationship. But what was the kind of process like for maybe, I guess, what stage you were brought in on the process?
Yeah, I mean, I was brought into Mystery Begins midway through the shoot. So I wasn't really like integral to the creation of the show, but Brian had just called me and he said, hey, I'm in Vancouver, and I was living in Vancouver at the time. And he said, hey, I'm in Vancouver, do you want to come and play? And I was like, hell yeah. And it was with Ernst. It was with C. Ernst Harth. And I worked with Ernst on, Scooby-Doo 2 already. And I worked with Ernst on the Muppets movie with Ashanti. And I worked with him on Are We There Yet? And so we went back. And I knew Ernst wasn't a dancer. But what was hilarious was he jumped in, like, he took it very seriously. Like, he took his dancing very seriously, more than most dancers do, which was hilarious to me, because it was simple stuff. To me, it was just like easy choreography for someone like me, but he took it seriously. That was fun. It was awesome. It was that was actually a quick shoot, but it was quirky and fun, and it was just nice to work with Brian again. That brought back a lot of great memories, and he gave me my first shot, really. So I would have I still would jump at any project with Brian. He's awesome. And then that led to the doing that led to what was the next Brian's next Scooby-Doo movie.
The Curse of the Lake Monster.
Curse of the Lake Monster. Why did I forget that name? Yeah, that led to Brian Levant's next film for Cartoon Network, Curse of the Lake Monster, which he shot in Los Angeles. And he called me, and they had another choreographer booked, actually, and something happened, and he just wasn't happy, or it fell through or something. And he called me, and he's like, "Are you around?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm around." And we shot that in this old oil field. There was a mansion in Culver City that is no one lives in anymore, but it was an old mansion for this family that had oil wells, and the oil wells are still active in that area. So the whole place reeked like oil, and while we were shooting. The cool thing for me was working with Brian and his pal Dean, who was a cinematographer, who was like a very famous cinematographer, Dean Candy. He's a legend, absolute legend. And so that I was kind of fanning out over that. We actually had a pretty ambitious musical number that took place in various locations across Los Angeles, sound stages to back alleys to the mansion, and working with CGI to live action. So it was a fun number. I mean, I think the song was called "As Long as I'm With You," or "I Could Be Scared with You." Started off in Woodstock era, and it kind of traveled through time into the future. It took us through a journey from Woodstock to disco to 90s rap or 80s rap to present day, to classic Tales and Tuxedos with Scooby and Fred and Shaggy dancing with monsters. That was a real fun number. That was a treat to do. And I remember I had to hire a b-boy to do head spins, because the number ends with a head spin drilling through the ground. We had a green screen on the ground, and we had a green screen behind him, and we put a helmet on him, and he was in Scooby-Doo's outfit, and we just let him go to town and do his head spins. He was like the head spin king. So yeah, it was great working with Robbie, and I've done I think 4 different projects with Robbie now. I'm a big fan of his show Upload. I'd love to work on Upload. I'm a big fan of Upload. But Robbie was, I couldn't believe how his skating abilities either. He can skate, he can roller skate. That's actually him skating, because I think he has a hockey background or whatever. And Haley has a skating background too. Her mom is a famous choreographer who is a Emmy award-winning choreographer, skating choreographer. Did I, Tonya, did a lot of stuff. So I knew her as well going into it. And Nick, who played Shaggy, just a great guy. I remember, when he first booked Shaggy, I remember he was still working at Bubblegum Shrimp. And I walked into Bubblegum Shrimp with my dad. I think he was visiting town, and I see him, and I'd been working with him in rehearsal, and I saw him, and he was actually our server. And I was like, Nick. So like, he was just a humble guy, a hardworking guy. And just to see his trajectory and success makes me happy, because he was awesome. He
really was incredible. Like, as Shaggy, I think, we've all said multiple times that, there's been this thing where it was kind of handed over, the role was handed from one Shaggy to Lillard, and then we said we'd very much, if the role was to be passed on to a returning member, Nick was honestly an incredible Shaggy. So
yeah,
huge fans of him.
Yeah.
And so I've got to ask, you've been involved in a couple of Scooby projects. So what was your background of Scooby before being involved with, working on the movies? Was it that you'd watched it growing up, or was it kind of like this was your first introduction?
No, I grew up on Scooby. So when it was my time to go for it, I had, I grew up on the original cartoon on Saturday mornings. It was always on Saturday mornings. So yeah, no, I grew up with Scooby and would always trying to be solving crime and mystery and supernatural with them as a child. So yeah, no, getting to do Scooby-Doo was definitely a highlight.
And like you say, the Mystery Begins was such an incredible project as well to be able to work on, and Cian's half and the dance that they did and that you helped choreograph with, that you choreographed, was honestly, so fun. And you said one of the main things that you do enjoy doing is those kind of like funny dances that, kind of make the audience laugh as well. So how do you approach something like that? Like, how do you choreograph a funny dance, if that makes sense?
I mean, it has to be grounded in honesty. Every piece of choreography. I don't look at choreography as like movement. I look at it as story. So just like a comedian looks at story, I've gotten the opportunity to work with like Robin Williams and Chris Kattan and Tracy Morgan and lots of like Neil Brennan and funny, just comedians, just legendary comedians. And what I love about working with comedians is they're reckless and they're fearless. So that's an element that you get. It's a treat to have as a choreographer. So I don't approach it any different than I do any of my work, really. I just come at it from an honest, playful place. And just I need to remain in a state of play. And I love to joke around during rehearsal, and I love to have fun. And I love to be serious at times too, but I always love to remain in a state of creative play. What if we did this? What if we did that? Oh my God, that would be stupid if we did that. I just keep it going, keep it flowing, and allow the actor to contribute. Let them be a part of the process, have them be a partner. Because if they're a partner, it's going to be theirs. It's going to be elevated. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. Not just them show up and I give them dance steps. I allow them to be part of the creative process.
No, I think that's great. I mean, that way it's like, everyone has a part in it. I feel like you've answered this next question, but for Curse of the Lake Monster, that was different location than the first one. So did you travel on location for that one compared to the first?
Oh yeah, the Curse of the Lake Monster was in Los Angeles, so
Okay.
it was doing Curse of the Lake Monster. It was shooting in Los Angeles, so it was fun because we're shooting in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And who gets to shoot movies in Hollywood anymore? Not many people.
Mm-hmm.
Everything shoots out of town in Atlanta and Canada and all over the world. So it's just so expensive to shoot here, and that was a highlight too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then for Curse of the Lake Monster again, that one had a wide variety of musical numbers. Did you get to collaborate at all with the composer David Newman for anything?
Yeah. Whenever I choreograph, I'll work with the composer. I'll work with whoever's doing the music, and we always have to work on timing and on. For example, we did a bit where they're astronauts and they're floating. Well, they're lip syncing too. So we're shooting at a very high speed. In order to shoot it at a high speed and get their lip sync to match, we have to speed the music up to be super high speed. So the music's like a chipmunk and they're singing really, 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 really fast. And they're doing the movement like real time, but the camera's going at super slow motion. So their mouth matches the lyrics and there's the slow motion is happening. So yeah, we had to collaborate on that, and we had to collaborate on, I'm always, it's always a collaboration. It's always a creation. So working with Newman and other composers along the way, it's necessary. It's without that collaboration, you wouldn't have great musical numbers, because you need to have that freedom when I get into the studio to change things or to add things. I need a couple hits here. I need this, that here. It
Mhm.
evolves. They can't be too locked in. If they are, the number doesn't evolve. And I've hit that roadblock before too.
Oh, well, the musical numbers in Castle Lake Monster definitely turned out incredible. There were ones from like By the Light of the Silvery Moon to, I Can Be Scared with You. So was there a favorite one that to you that stood out as being like favorite to choreograph and the different styles?
I think my favorite one was the disco. Was the disco and that led into Robbie and was it Haley? Robbie and Haley on ice, on skates, on roller skates. That was a highlight. And then Shaggy was on roller skates too, but he wasn't the best. Remember, he was he was struggling, and Scooby was as well. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And what are some of your favorite memories from working on either of the or any of the Scooby-Doo movies?
I think my favorite memories from working on the Scooby-Doo films was the camaraderie and the cast. Robbie, Haley, Kate, Nick, and Brian. The environment was like fun and collaborative, and it was like a family. It was really supportive. They were all supportive of each other. They were all supportive of the overall vision. So just that alone was a treat to go to work every day.
That's just incredible. It is a shame that they never managed to get around to making the third movie that I know was intended and then cancelled, like in like the script writing stage. But hopefully that they come back and do some more live action Scooby stuff soon, and to get in the process of switching up the scene a bit and wrapping things up, talking more about the present day and I guess what's going on in the future as well. Recently I know that you won an award for like outstanding choreography in a motion picture. What's it like to receive those types of accolades from your work?
Receiving awards, yeah. It's definitely an honor. But it's not it's like getting you get a new car or something, you're really excited that first week, and then the novelty wears off, and you're all of a sudden looking at other cars. it's the novelty wears off, but it's definitely an honor, because I don't do it for the awards. I've never done it for the awards. In fact, I won the MTV award recently, and then this Leo award that I just got. And I mean, getting a golden popcorn was so cool. I just thought it was just so cool. But I never did it for the awards, and I never cared. I always did it for the art and the fun and the fulfillment I get, and the ability to change the world through art. Really, I get to tell stories and change people's mood through entertainment, and it's a pretty cool job to have. That to me is my trophy.
I mean, it's definitely like so amazing what you've done, and it's like you say, you don't do it for the awards, but I think that's probably part of the reason why you are winning, all these awards now, because when you focus on telling the story, it just changes so much for the better. Like imagining if like the director on A Series of Unfortunate Events weren't so open to suggestion, like the whole almost random but amazing musical numbers from Count Olaf ultimately influence his character going forward. That becomes part of who he is, and that's quite significant. So that would have been lost without your input. But I guess switching on to more like the future stuff, do you have any upcoming projects that you can share about today?
Well, yeah, well, to speak on that for a second, is choreography is dance writing. So a lot there's no real university for directors to learn how to work with a choreographer, and there's a real big disconnect a lot of times when a first-time director comes to work with a choreographer, or a director who's just never worked with a choreographer in any capacity. They kind of have a big question mark around it and don't really sometimes know how to approach that collaboration. And the job of a choreographer is to tell a story, and is really to dance the definition is dance writer, really. And it's our job to tell stories through physical dialogue and move that story forward. So usually when we get a script, it says they dance, or the musical numbers has like 2 paragraphs. Yet you have to choreograph an entire 2-minute song or 3-minute song. So you have to create that story and figure out how that story moves forward. Otherwise, it's going to end up on the cutting room floor. So I was encouraged when directors ask me that who are about to work with a choreographer, I encourage them to embrace that collaboration and really find a choreographer that you could trust and really listen to them, because they're there to make you look better. So that's my advice to a lot of directors going into working with working with choreographers for the first time. So they're not, they don't feel like they're being hijacked. Yeah, and to speak on work that I have coming up in the future. Yeah, I have a Honor Society just got released on Paramount Plus.
Oh, I just watched that. It was so good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that was a fun process to
Written
work
by
on.
David Goodman, I think, as well.
Yeah. So Honor Society just got out, and I have a movie called Ivy and Bean that I choreographed, and it's based on the best-selling kids books, Ivy and Bean. So that's coming out on Netflix pretty soon. I'm going to the premiere on this month, and I'm not allowed to talk about it, but it's on IMDb, and it's announced that I've been working on The Last of Us. And so I can't say anything about that, but that's been an absolute amazing time for me, a long time. And I have a bunch of projects that Kenny Ortega and I are developing, musicals and a docu-series, and just we have a lot of fun working together. So I'm excited about that journey and what we're bringing to the world.
That's incredible, and we're really excited to be keeping up with these projects as well. So can I ask, just by way of last question, where can people keep up to date with the work that you're doing and all the announcements of when new things come out as well? I know you've mentioned you've got a YouTube, and we'll link that in the description below, but any other social media or websites?
Yeah, I've my website's beckercreations.com, and I also have Instagram and TikTok now, and my YouTube channel. So those are the 3 main ways to keep in touch with me. Drop me a line, say hi, and like or follow.
Okay, so we are going to link all of those in the description below, so as you said, people can go like and follow and see what else happens in the future, which we're really excited to see transpire.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time you've given us today. It's been an absolute honor to speak with you about your incredible work, and we're very much looking forward to keeping up with it. So I guess by way of wrapping things up, thank you so much to everyone for watching this. Remember, you can keep up with all of Mr. Paul Becker's work in the description down below. We're going to find anything and everything and link it down there. You can also follow all of Smash's things in the description down below, and Rhianna's things, and you'll find our link tree there as well. So if you do want to see this and more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.